This video series is brought to you by StarCityGames.com. Visit us for all your Magic the Gathering needs. In this Legacy Decknology segment, we'll take a look at Countertop Progenitus, a powerful and versatile Legacy deck. Here is an example of Countertop Progenitus as piloted to 4th place at the Star City Games Legacy Open in Philadelphia recently. There are a few key interactions with this deck, so let's get to it. On the creature side, we begin with Noble Hierarch, called Better Than Birds by many. This monster mana maker pumps up any creature you have with Exalted, including herself, all while smoothing out your mana requirements. Tarmogoyf is next, simply one of the biggest creatures for the cheapest cost ever printed in Magic. He gets huge just by playing spells and lands, normally a 4/5 or 5/6 in just a few turns, particularly a format as fast as Legacy. Rock's Warmonk is next. His 3/4 body is no joke, bringing the beats, and often his lifelink ability is enough to keep you in the game against aggressive decks. Trigon Predator sneaks in as a one-of in the main deck. This little all-star has been cleaning up the format for quite a while now. Many of Legacy's most powerful decks rely on an artifact or enchantment, and this Flying Naturalize is something that many decks have to kill immediately or they begin losing a permanent a turn. Lastly is our one-of Progenitus. Now this creature is never meant to actually be cast from your hand. Instead, you cheat it into play with a spell. Let's learn how. For the spells, this deck relies on one key interaction, Sensei's Divining Top and Counterbalance. Whenever your opponent plays a spell, the Counterbalance ability will go on the stack. In response to this trigger, you may use Sensei's Divining Top's ability to look at and rearrange your top 3 cards of your library, ideally putting a card on top that has the same converted mana cost as your opponent's just cast spell in order to counter it with Counterbalance. Also remember that you can use Sensei's Divining Top's draw ability while a 1-mana spell from your opponent is on the stack, guaranteeing it to be countered via Counterbalance. Often players will try and use Krosan Grip to get around these shenanigans, but that can be thwarted as well. While you cannot use activated abilities while Krosan Grip is on the stack due to its split-second ability, the Counterbalance trigger will still go on the stack. Smart Counterbalance players will then leave a 3-mana spell on top of their library, say a Rock's Warmonk, so that when your opponent plays Krosan Grip, even though they can't respond, they have a 3-mana spell ready on top to catch them and counter it. Other spells work alongside Counterbalance for maximum countering effect. The first is Brainstorm, a card that does very unfair things with a Counterbalance in play, drawing 3 cards instantly and allowing you to stack the top of your deck. Ponder does much of the same thing, but is at sorcery speed. However, it does allow you to shuffle your library, something you can use with Sensei's Divining Top in order to see even more cards from the top of your deck. Daze is a card primarily for counterspell wars or the early game when you absolutely must counter a spell from your opponent. It is rare that Daze is hardcast, meaning actually paying a blue and a colorless mana. Rather, you most often pick up an island from the battlefield to pay for it instead. Moving on, we have the best counterspell in the format, Force of Will, another card very rarely paid full price for. Usually you will be paying 1 life and exiling a Daze, Ponder, or even a Rock's Warmonk to pay for its alternate cost. This counterspell, along with Daze, allows you the benefit of playing spells on your turn while not worrying about tapping all of your mana in order to do so. In other words, you can still interact with your opponent if you have no mana available. Swords to Plowshares is perhaps the best creature removal spell ever printed. This super removal spell deals with virtually every creature played in the format, at the cost of giving your opponent some life. Trust me, the trade-off is worth it. Lastly, we come to Natural Order. This is the reason Progenitus is in the deck, and vice versa. Using Natural Order, you can trade in your Noble Hierarch for Progenitus, since Progenitus is technically a green creature as well as being a white, blue, black, and red one. Most players won't actually play Natural Order unless you have some sort of counterspell backup, such as Force of Will and another card to pitch to it if need be. Sideboarding options for this deck are many, as often in Legacy, but here's a few popular choices. Engineered Explosives is a powerful board sweeper against Zoo decks, who often have 1-mana creatures as a highlight, and is very good against Elf decks for the same reason. Relic of Progenitus and Tormod's Crypt are cards that help deal with the Dredge matchup, a scarily fast deck. More Trigon Predators have been seen in Countertop sideboards, as it is a crucial creature in the mirror match. Once your 2/3 destroys your opponent's counterbalance, they will be very hard-pressed to play another without dealing with him first. Blue Elemental Blast is a card that is both a 1-mana counterspell for red spells, or a removal spell for anything on the battlefield that's red. Hydroblast does the exact same thing, and often both of these cards are included in sideboards, so you can play around an opponent's meddling mage that declares one or the other. Lastly, Krosan Grib is another mirror match monster, but again, the smart players are those who try to keep a 3-mana spell on top of their library for just these situations. I hope this overview has given you a little insight on how Countertop Progenitus works. Be sure to check StarCityGames.com for all your Magic the Gathering needs.